Today I would like to talk to you about my own small-scale effort towards increasing and improving media literacy in Scotland, which is based on the phenomenon of fake news, which I see as an important part of news literacy education. Fake news is everywhere. Maybe it's not, but at least that's the perception, which is why all of us, and young people in particular, need new skills so we can critically approach news consumption. As research into the fake news phenomenon grows, there are more and more definitions of the term, but I will use the one provided by the Ethical Journalism Network, which says that fake news is information that has been deliberately fabricated and disseminated with the intention to deceive and mislead others into believing falsehoods or doubting verifiable facts. The phenomenon of fake news is not new. Rumor and false stories have been around for as long as humans, but in its current incarnation it presents a number of unique features and challenges. The current fake news phenomenon is taking place in a relatively new and fast-changing media and news ecosystem driven by the rapid development of the internet. Thanks to that, fake news is being produced with an increased sophistication and on a much larger scale. Most fake news dissemination takes place on social media platforms such as Facebook or Twitter, where content can be relayed among users with no significant third-party filtering, fact-checking, or editorial judgment. By providing every user with a potentially mass audience, social media platforms have broken traditional journalism's monopoly over news production and distribution. An individual user with no track record or reputation can in some cases reach as many readers as, say, Fox News, CNN, or the New York Times. As we all know, the phenomenon of fake news became particularly prominent during and after the 2016 US presidential election, and to a lesser extent, the preceding EU referendum campaign in the UK in the same year. Research published just after the US election offered interesting findings regarding the belief in fake news effects. 88% of Americans said that fake news has caused confusion about the basic facts of current events, and a quarter of them reported that they have shared fake political news online. The prevailing concern is that widespread fake news on social media will precipitate a crisis of democracy by undermining the assumption that members of the democratic society are informed and capable of making rational decisions. My own ongoing project that aims to raise awareness of fake news among young people in Scotland is situated within the wider context of information, media, and news literacy. Information literacy is a set of abilities requiring individuals to recognize when information is needed and have the ability to locate, evaluate, and use effectively the needed information. Information literacy also is increasingly important in the contemporary environment of rapid technological change and proliferating information resources. It is an intellectual framework for understanding, finding, evaluating, and using information. Media literacy sits within information literacy. It is defined as the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and communicate a variety of media messages, or acquisition of knowledge structures, especially about the media industries, general content patterns, and the broad view of effects. Media literacy should be about helping people to become sophisticated citizens rather than sophisticated consumers. The mass media, in other words, should be understood as more than a collection of texts to be deconstructed and analyzed so that we can distinguish or choose among them. If we narrow this down further, we come to the part of media literacy that my project works within, news literacy, the ability to distinguish real news from the burgeoning numbers of imitators that might look like works of journalism on the surface, but are not the products of journalistic practices involving verification and so on. Or, as Ashley puts it, news literacy is about exporting the journalistic epistemology to ordinary citizens struggling to navigate daily life, checking facts, evaluating sources, examining evidence. When news literacy is considered in the context of long-standing domains of media literacy and civic literacy, it becomes clear that critical analysis of the information environment requires a deeper understanding of the context in which news is produced. In my workshops in secondary schools in Scotland, I have taken the content-centered approach outlined by Kovac and Rosenstiel, who emphasize the skills of how to read news. They encourage a skeptical way of knowing based on 6 questions. What kind of content am I encountering? Is the information complete, and if not, what is missing? What or who are the sources, and why should I believe them? What evidence is presented, and how was it tested or vetted? What might be an alternative explanation or understanding? And am I learning what I need to? So based on the above, I have designed a workshop that I deliver in secondary schools at the moment just in and around Edinburgh, with a view to expanding this project to the whole of Scotland. I talk to pupils aged 13 to 16 about the history of fake news, its definition, and some key examples before turning to the few simple steps pupils can take when reading news on social media and the internet in general. The last part of my workshop is a discussion with pupils about 2 key issues. What can be done at societal level to combat the spread of fake news, and who should do it? Ourselves, social media giants, or our government? Earlier this year, the Commission on Fake News and Critical Literacy in Schools, set up by the UK Parliament and National Literacy Trust, found that only 2% of children and young people in the United Kingdom have the critical literacy skill they need to tell whether a news story is real or fake. Half of children are worried about not being able to spot fake news, and almost 2/3 of teachers believe fake news is having a harmful effect on children's well-being by increasing levels of anxiety, damaging self-esteem, and skewing their worldview. Proliferation of fake news is making children trust the news less. While almost half of all the children get their news from websites and social media, only 1/4 of children actually trust online news sources. Regulated sources of news, such as TV and radio, remain the most used and the most trusted by children and young people. Furthermore, children are most likely to talk to their family and friends about fake news and least likely to speak to their teachers. Yet, 98.8% of teachers in the UK believe they have the greatest responsibility for helping children develop the literacy skills they need to identify fake news. The Commission has made several recommendations, including efforts to ensure that the teaching of critical literacy is relevant for the digital age, is included within initial teacher training and continuous professional development projects. Also, it recommended that the assessment framework be updated to position critical literacy skills more explicitly, reflecting the changing digital landscape and the threats posed by fake news. And finally, that the teaching of critical literacy is embedded across the curriculum and applied to the whole school, not just isolated subjects such as, say, media studies, which in the UK is a formal accredited curriculum subject. I hope that my project can grow and fit in. I am beginning talks at the moment with the Scottish Government and other stakeholders in Scotland about this project, as I believe this is an urgent issue that needs addressing in a systematic way.